Chances are, if you're relying on willpower and motivation to reach your health goals, you probably experience burnout a lot. Motivation fades, and willpower is not a solid strategy for actually moving the needle on health behaviors. So, what actually works are habits, systems, and standards. And that's what I want to dive into in today's episode. I want to talk about these three foundational elements of behavior change that lasts. So I want to explore how habits help you take action, systems make those actions consistent and repeatable, and standards raise the bar for what you are willing to accept for yourself. So we're not going to talk about any quick fix solutions here. I mean, obviously, if you're here on the podcast, you know that's not what we're talking about. But I want to talk about habits, systems, and standards because I think they are the bedrock of real sustainable change. So by the end of this episode, you will know how to create systems and build habits and set standards that support the version of yourself that you want to grow into. So I'm going to break it all down into actionable steps that you can start using today. Welcome back to the Hey Steph Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm Steph. I'm a holistic nutritionist and an eating psychology coach, and I have this podcast to hopefully help you implement healthy habits to feel your best and to change your behaviors for the better. So let's start with talking about habits, the small daily actions that either push you closer to your goals or hopefully not, but potentially pull you further away from them. I want to today reference James Clear. His book, Atomic Habits, which I have right here, is amazing. It's one of the 10 books that changed my life. If you haven't grabbed that download, I have a free download that you can get on my Instagram account, the 10 books that changed the way I eat and live. And this is one of them. It's the oldest book on the list, I think, and it's just a classic. So I'm going to quote a couple passages from there today, and really that I feel like is one of the foundational sources for today's episode. So habits are really the small, even tiny actions that we repeat until they become automatic. And you can think about habits as casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. I really like this way of looking at habits. So for example, eating protein at every meal is casting a vote for becoming someone who prioritizes their nutrition or protein at every meal. So it's essentially, if you think about voting, you pick one side or the other. So every time you are stepping up to make a health decision or not, it's a fork in the road. And when you choose to do the thing that you want to do, the habit that you want to instill and have it become part of you, it's voting for that version of yourself who prioritizes your health. So habits don't need to be life-altering at first. An important element of habits is consistency. And by consistency, I do not mean perfection. It doesn't mean you have to do it every single day or you have failed. I really like James Clear's 1% better rule. He talks about how improving by 1% every day adds up to exponential results over time. He talks about quick wins, 2-minute wins, where you can take a habit you want to implement and find the smallest possible version of that to start with. So maybe it's you want to get more exercise and you're doing 0 exercise, let's say. You're going from nothing and you want to get to a person who is active consistently. So maybe a 2-minute win would be a 2-minute walk after dinner, and you implement that every single night. And it starts small, but it can grow into something transformative. Once you get used to that, maybe you expand the time, maybe eventually you expand the intensity, maybe you move the time around, but it starts with something small. And I think that's really important when you think about habits, that we start small and we give ourselves easy wins. Wins are motivating. To feel successful is where motivation comes from a lot of the time. When we talk about, well, I'm not motivated to change, it's really taking action and feeling successful that will create that momentum of motivation that keeps you moving in that direction. It's like an upward spiral. All right, habits are pretty self-explanatory. I wanted to touch on it because I think if you think about it, it's kind of like the building blocks of behavior change. It's like the smallest piece. So the second thing I want to talk about is systems. This is kind of these repeatable frameworks for success in your health behaviors. So habits are great. Without a system to support them, you will lose momentum. And that's where systems come in. They're like the scaffolding. They're like the machine running behind the scenes that make your habits more consistent and also easier, taking less effort. So James Clear says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I mean, that quote changed my life. I love it so much in thinking about goals can only get you so far. But when you fall back on your systems, you can't fall rock bottom. If you have systems to catch you, then you will win. Systems are what will keep you going and moving forward. Goals are the destination and systems are more the process that will get you there. James Clear says goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. This section is in the very beginning of the book. If you want to just start, I'm such a book lover. I cannot help but recommend this. This podcast is just going to skim, but really if you're interested in changing behavior, I would highly recommend reading this. And even just this opening chapter about systems. So let's say, for example, you have a goal of weight loss. We're going to use this example because it's easy. Your system is the healthy behaviors that will get you there. And there's this quote I love from the book, from Atomic Habits. He says, if you completely ignored your goals and focused only on your system, would you still succeed? I think you would. Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. So let me use another example of cleaning out a cluttered closet. Let's say you have a goal to declutter your closet and you do it. That will only change your life for the moment, for an hour. If you maintain the same habits and systems that led to the closet getting cluttered and messy in the first place, you will very soon be staring at the messy closet again and hoping for a burst of motivation to clean it again. This is why it's critical to think about our systems around our health behaviors. It will help you continue the behaviors, the habits, long term instead of just reaching a goal and then falling off the cliff and going right back to the way you were before. So again, a system is something that helps you automate and simplify your habits. So I want to use meal planning and preparing around food as a system example here. I use the word meal prepping very loosely. There's a lot of ways that could look. So I don't want you to think about, when I say meal prepping, that I'm talking about perfectly matching containers and your fridge just looking like a Tupperware ad or a Container Store ad. There's so many different ways to prep. When I say prep, I literally mean just prepare, prepare to whatever degree you want. So I love to plan. I love to plan ahead. Every single weekend, I plan for the upcoming week. I know what I'm going to cook, and more often than not, I know when. I at least have a skeleton plan of what I'm going to make on what nights, and sometimes that moves around a little bit, but for the most part, I try to stick to my plan because it eliminates decision fatigue. I don't do a big Sunday prep of 5 different meals. There are people that I actually really enjoy following on Instagram who do these big batch preps of lots of stuff. I like to cook. I enjoy cooking. And so I do that more often than not, more nights than I don't. I do use pieces of a big batch of grilled chicken, and then I'll use that on 3 different meals throughout the week. So there's a little bit of batch prepping going in, or a big pot of soup, and then I'm having that for lunch. But this system that I have of planning ahead, preparing food to whatever degree I'm able to do it that week, makes healthy eating easier, even automatic, I could say, because I always know what I'm going to eat that week, and I always know what I'm going to eat that day. The meals that I eat, yes, have led to losing excess fat on my body and gaining muscle. But when I reached that goal of doing those things, I didn't stop that system or those habits when I reached that temporary goal, because these habits, this system had become the natural default way that I live. So you can see how healthy eating might be the goal, but the system becomes the way I live. It becomes the moving pieces that I implement week after week after week, and it's just becomes who I am. Another system you can think about is a morning routine. So this could look like setting out workout clothes the night before. So the goal is not set your workout clothes the night before, right? That might be a habit that's a piece in the system that's eliminating decision fatigue the next morning, that's making it easier. Part of my, I guess you could say, morning routine system is I keep my alarm or my phone plugged in the bathroom. It is never on my nightstand. I have to get up. Pushing snooze is not even an option. I don't even offer it to myself as an option because I'll take the easy way out. I know myself. I know my brain. I will try to talk myself into like, oh, it's okay. It's okay to sleep in. I'll push snooze. I just take it off the table as an option. And that habit is part of this system of my morning routine. I like to study scriptures in the morning. So I make that easy for myself. I have these habits. I have a plan made ahead of time. I put my books and the resources that I need in the spot that I do my study. I keep my planner and my pen there at night. Nighttime Stephanie has to think ahead to help morning Stephanie accomplish what I want to do. So I make sure my laptop is charging. I read my scriptures at my dining room table, so I make sure my laptop is in there. My scriptures are in there. My pen and my planner are on the table. So it's ready for me when I come and sit down at 4:30 in the morning. I don't want to be looking around like, where's my charger? I can't find my scriptures. Like everything is there. So the morning routine happens because of the system of preparing the night before. And this can be infinitely adapted to any habit or any goal that you want to have. Create a system around it to set yourself up for success. There's another point that is going to lead into my third point here about standards. James Clear talks about the 3 layers of behavior change. He talks about outcomes-based change, where you're changing your results. This would be like the tip of the iceberg. This would be I lost weight, or I gained muscle, I changed my body, I changed my outcome, my result. There's process-based behavior change. So this would be what I was just talking about, changing your habits and your systems. I love this. I love this aspect of behavior change. It is endlessly fascinating to me. The third piece here is identity. So that means changing your beliefs, changing your self-image. And I love this. This is going to transition into this point I want to make on standards. Identity behavior change is how you move in the direction of who you want to be, the person you want to become. It's not just the things you want to do, the habits you want to have, the behaviors you want to practice, what you want to change or improve. When you set out to improve your health, again, we'll use this example of losing excess body fat. You might think, I just want to be thinner, and if I stick to this diet, I will be smaller. So thinner, smaller is the outcome. Sticking to a diet is the process. But if you don't change the way you see yourself and who you believe yourself to be, those changes will only be temporary. At some point, your old identity will resurface and sabotage your attempts at change. Now, I think that can feel potentially terrifying. Like, well, if I go about it wrong, or I don't shift my beliefs at the beginning, then I'm bound to fail. There is a lot to be said for setting out to shift your beliefs and your identity from the outset. But I also believe and have found in my own experience that it takes practice. It takes your brain some proof to latch onto. And this goes back to this small wins that I talked about earlier. The more you act as if you are that person and you practice those behaviors that version of you does, the more you will believe yourself to be that person. It's not just like this manifesting, positive affirmation like I am healthy. It's like when you prove to yourself through the doing, through the repetition at the habit level, you prove to yourself that you are who you want to be. So I think that change is a two-way street. I think it goes both ways. Yes, set out to shift your beliefs and your identity from the outset. And also, don't worry that you're not there at the beginning, because you're going to prove to yourself that you are as you practice being that person. I hope that makes sense. So again, systems are so important. They remove decision fatigue. They help you stay consistent even when life gets busy or your motivation fades. And they give you that scaffolding, that structure, so you don't have to rely on willpower. You don't have to be like, should I do this? Do I feel like it? Do I want to? The decision was already made by old you, yesterday you, last night you. So the structure's there. You just have to follow through. You just have to execute on the plan. And I think there's so much power in that. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about here is standards. I learned about this from this book, Forever Strong, by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I actually first heard her say this on a podcast, and it struck me so much. This book had been on my list of books to read for a long time, and when I heard her talk about standards, I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to read the book. So standards are the foundation of what you are willing to accept for yourself. And again, this goes into what I was just saying about identity-based behavior change. Without that, even the best habits and systems won't stick forever. I think standards are more of the psychological component of behavior change. Systems feel very action-driven, and standards are more in line, in my mind, with your belief system. Setting standards for yourself involves changing what you feel you deserve. And this was one of the points that Dr. Lyon made on this podcast I was listening to. The host was asking her, by the way, this was on a podcast called Diary of a CEO, which I don't listen to regularly. I think YouTube recommended it to me. Thanks, YouTube algorithm. And it's not a podcast I was familiar with before, but I loved it because the host asked her, why do people not change? Like, why do you think it's hard for people to follow through on their commitments, to take action? And I think the host was kind of expecting her to be like, to take this tack of, well, people are just lazy, or they just need to work harder or try harder. And she completely did not say that. She talked about how there's this underlying self-sabotaging element to behavior change where people don't feel like they deserve it. There's some element of them that's like, I'm not worthy of being that version of me. I'm not worthy of being that person. That is both, I think, heartbreaking and absolutely true. So setting standards is one way of working with that, of teaching your brain, I deserve this. I deserve to feel good and follow through on my commitments, even when I don't feel like it, or even when it's hard. So standards kind of define the baseline of how you live your life. If you think about in a religious context, we have standards, right, that kind of determine the choices that we make in many given situations. I think it's helpful to have that type of thinking around health as well. And again, it doesn't need to be religious. It doesn't need to be all or nothing like some religious standards are. It doesn't need to be very black and white. But I think standards can be really helpful in stepping into that version of yourself that you want to be. So in this book, Forever Strong, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon says, I don't talk much about setting goals for wellness. To me, that framework offers too much room for failure, keeping too many people in cycles of sickness when they deserve the freedom of optimal health. Instead of goals, let's focus on setting the standards necessary for you to reach your future self, who embodies strength inside and out. So this quote continues, social psychologist Dr. Emily Balcetis, author of Clearer, Closer, Better, How Successful People See the World, recommends a 3-part formula for making changes. 1, dream big. 2, plan concretely. And 3, foreshadow failure. And then I'm still quoting her because this is a long but really good quote. Raising yourself up to high standards takes hard work and planning. Keep reminding yourself of the costs of continuing your negative habits while cultivating the positivity that will propel you to execute. Our ultimate goal is for the health-promoting action to become so well practiced and ingrained that it becomes your default response, creating a life that supports your own vision for yourself. Like, boom, I'm not going to actually drop my microphone because that would be foolish. But man, I love that ending. Our ultimate goal is for the health promoting action to become so well practiced and ingrained that it becomes your default response. So that could look like I am a person who eats in a way that nourishes my body instead of I'm trying to lose weight. Or I am someone who moves my body regularly, not I'm going to start working out on Monday or next month. Standards are non-negotiable. She also says if you set a standard for how you operate and how you execute, you know that regardless of how you feel, you do it. Standards are non-negotiable. There's so much power in this idea of standards. I can't even articulate it fully. I feel like I'm still mentally chewing on it and thinking about it as I go throughout my life, because I think there's a danger in thinking about standards in becoming overly rigid. And I don't think that that's the point. And even this phrase non-negotiable, which I love so much because I get into negotiations with myself of like, well, I don't really feel like doing this today, or maybe I could do that tomorrow. So this idea of negotiation, of like eliminating negotiation, was such a powerful point to me that I took away from this book, Forever Strong. And I think when people hear that term non-negotiable, it's very easy to think rigidity, inflexibility, perfectionism, all or nothing thinking. And I reject that. I think we can have both things be true at the same time. I think we can have standards that are non-negotiable and we do things whether we feel like it or not. And also knowing that there are times when that behavior might not make sense. This is why I think health is hard and learning to live in a body is hard, because there is no black and white. Like, I cannot hand you a perfect plan. No one can, for how you should live every single day or what you should do in every single situation. You set your own standards. You decide what is non-negotiable for you. And then as needed, you adapt and change and grow. But I love this point about dreaming big and planning concretely and foreshadowing failure. There's so much in there. Dream big. You can have whatever you want. The future version of you is unlimited. And what you expect for yourself now, you could completely bust through that glass ceiling. Plan concretely. I think this is where systems come in, setting up systems to make your standards doable and actionable. To allow you to live up to your standard, you have to have a solid system in place. And this idea of foreshadowing failure, oh my gosh, this is everything. Be prepared for moments when life gets hard. Have a plan to stay aligned with your standards. There is no change without failure. It's literally not possible. You will fail as you grow, as you try. You will fail thousands of times. I have, but here I am. And what I try to do is learn from that failure to prepare myself better for the next time I encounter that situation and just stay aligned with those standards. So habits, systems, and standards. I hope that feels helpful in thinking about behavior change for you. There's so much more. I wanted to just give kind of like an overview because I just love studying behavior change, and this is just so fun for me. Again, if you want to go grab the download, I link those two books, Forever Strong and Atomic Habits, in my 10 books that change the way I eat and live download. You can grab that on Instagram. I'm there at Hey Steph Web. And if you comment 10 books on any of my posts, my little robot helper will send you the link to that free download. Right now, you can only get it on Instagram. Sorry, that's annoying. I don't have a website set up right now. Again, just kind of winging it here, but having fun anyway. So habits are those small, repeatable actions that build momentum. Think about an upward spiral. Systems are the frameworks that make those habits sustainable and more effortless. Not effortless, because it's never effortless. Living in a body will always take effort, but hopefully a little less effort than it would otherwise. And standards are the foundation that keep everything aligned with the person you want to become. So again, I want to give you some small options for small action steps you can take today or tomorrow, depending on if you're listening to this late at night, to start implementing what I've talked about in this episode today. I want you to, first thing is pick one small habit that you can start with. Pick something easy that's just like one little notch up from where you currently are. This could be, again, taking a walk after dinner each day, or planning your food the night before for what you're going to eat the following day. It could be grocery shopping. I mean, it could be anything. I'm not even going to list things you could do because I could just talk for another 18 hours. But pick one small habit that you want to do. You know yourself. You know what's kind of niggling in the back of your brain. What do you want to do? Second is think about and actually create a system to support that habit. So for example, maybe you want to plan your food the night before. And so you set an alarm on your phone to remind you to do that. And you go peek in the fridge at what you have on hand for tomorrow. And you make a quick note. You jot it down on a, I don't care, sticky note, notebook in your phone. I use a food tracking app. Whatever, wherever you want to put it. So you go into the day with a plan. When you wake up in the morning, your food decisions have been made. There is a lot of peace in that. It's kind of like waking up to a clean kitchen, but in your brain. It's really amazing. Or maybe it's you want to go for an after dinner walk. I am obsessed with after dinner walks. So maybe a system could be assigning dishes to your children. I have 3 teenagers, so this is possible for me to do right now. If you have like a 1, 2, and 3-year-old, this is probably not going to work for you. I want to give you an example though. You kind of outsource that chore to your kids, and you just instantly step outside for a quick loop around your block right after you load your plate in the dishwasher. That's kind of my trigger. That's what I do. I load my plate in the dishwasher, and now I'm like kind of trained like a dog. As soon as my dinner is over, I'm just itching to get outside. I'm like, my body's like, go walk. And I love it. I've established that habit, and the habit then reinforces itself because I love it so much. The third option here for an action step is maybe more reflective and just reflecting on your standards. I want you to think about what standards you have for yourself and what standards you want for yourself. There's no wrong way to phrase this. There's no right way to phrase this. I hesitate to even give examples because, again, I think it can come across as all or nothing, and I don't want to do that. But you know what a standard is. So think about what you want for yourself, and then I want you to foreshadow failure, like that quote from Dr. Lyon said, which was actually a quote from someone else, from Emily Balcetis, I think she said. What is standing in your way? What is a barrier to you doing that consistently? Like maybe you want to stop eating as much ultra-processed foods, but they are always around you. So you set a higher standard for your food quality or your food environment, and you quit bringing them into your house. Maybe one by one. Maybe you pick one, category or one food that you want to swap out for something better. I mean, it could be anything, but think about your standards that you want to have for yourself and then what's standing in your way, and kind of brainstorm what are some ways around this that I could foreshadow failure and set myself up for success. If you are interested in learning more about the 5 habits and systems really that have transformed my body and my health, you can check out my course Anchor Down. I cover the 5 things that made all the difference for me and go into a little bit more depth. You can find that on Instagram. Again, I'm there at Hey Steph Web. I'm going to read the URL because you can type this in and it will be successful. You will find it. It's also linked in my Instagram bio. You can just go to Instagram. You can comment Anchor on any of my posts and it will send you the link. But if you don't want to go to Instagram and you're super anti-Instagram, I get it. I'm going to read you the URL. It's stan.store/Hey Steph Web. That's where you can check out my course Anchor Down. You can find the free download with my 10 books there. Not my 10 books, the 10 books that I love and recommend. So that's stan.store/Hey Steph Web, and hopefully that will be helpful. So I so much appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. I hope this has felt helpful, and I will talk to you next week.